Okay, so you've been learning about step events, right? And you've got the hang of basic motion, making things move around the screen.
Like sliding left, right, up, down, all that good stuff.
Exactly. So today we're going to take that and, well, do some fun things with it.
Yeah, we're going to go beyond just those straight lines.
Think about reversing direction, making things stop instantly.
Ooh, and bouncing around.
And even that classic wraparound you see in some games.
We got some great resources for this that really break down how to do these things.
And even though some of this might seem simple, like, oh, I get how to make something stop.
But when you see the code behind it, it's like a whole new level of understanding.
It's like, oh, that's how they do it in the games I play.
Exactly. So let's dive in. First up, reversing motion.
Okay, reversing motion. So picture this. You've got an object, let's say a circle, moving to the right across the screen.
Right.
How do you make it suddenly turn around and go left?
Well, it all comes down to something called the horizontal velocity component. It's often represented by dx.
Dx, okay.
And to reverse the direction, you just got to flip the sign of this dx value. So positive becomes negative, negative becomes positive, like a light switch.
And the examples we're looking at show this perfectly. They use a simple line of code, c.dx.c.dx.
That's it. Just that one line flips the direction.
Every time that line runs, the object is like, whoops, wrong way, gotta go back.
Yeah. Think of it like a car switching from drive to reverse. Or, even a ball bouncing off a wall. It changes direction.
Ah, that makes sense.
And in the code examples, you can even press the R key, and boom, the circle reverses instantly.
Oh, that's cool. It's like you're controlling it in real time.
Exactly. And this is the same basic principle behind more complex stuff like bouncing, which we'll get to later.
Okay, so that's reversing. What about making something stop completely, like full stop, no more movement?
Right. So if changing the sign of dx makes it go the other way, what do you think makes it stop completely?
Well, if changing the sign flips the direction, maybe setting dx to 0.
You got it.
Yeah.
If dx is 0, the object isn't changing its horizontal position at all, so it just sits there.
Like hitting the pause button.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And the examples show this with the X key. You can move the circle left and right with the arrow keys, but press ES, and bam, it stops right where it is.
So no matter what direction it was going, dx becomes 0 and it freezes.
Exactly. It's like pausing a game or even an object in real life coming to a complete stop. Its velocity becomes 0.
Cool. So we've got reversing and stopping, but what if we want to make sure our object stays on the screen? We don't want it to just disappear off the edge.
Right. We need to keep it contained. That's where bounded motion comes in.
Bounded motion. Okay, so I'm guessing that means setting boundaries, like invisible walls, so the object can't go beyond a certain point.
Exactly. It's like setting up a fence in your code. The code examples we have show this with the circle. They check if the right edge of the circle, represented as c.right, has gone beyond a certain point, which in this case is 400 pixels.
400 pixels, okay.
And if it has, the code just moves the circle back. So its right edge is at 400 pixels. So it moves right and then hits this invisible wall and stops.
Like it bumps into it, so you'd see it moving to the right, and then bam, it just stops at that 400 pixel line.
Precisely. And now here's a little thought experiment for you. This is like checkpoint number 1.
Okay, I'm ready.
Imagine if instead of starting with a dx of 5, which moves it to the right, the circle started with a dx of -5.
Yeah.
What do you think would happen?
-5, so it would be moving to the left.
Yeah.
Well, if the code is only checking if the right edge is past 400 pixels, and it's moving to the left, wouldn't it just keep going off the screen on the left side?
You got it. It would just keep going left.
Yeah.
Because there's nothing in this code telling it what to do when it hits the left edge.
Ah, makes sense. Okay, so that's bounded motion, keeping things within a certain area. But what about something a bit more, unexpected, like that wraparound effect we talked about earlier?
Wraparound. A classic. It's where the object disappears off one side of the screen and instantly reappears on the other side.
It's so cool when you see it in games. Makes you wonder how they do it.
Well, the code we're looking at checks if the left edge of the circle, represented as c.left, goes beyond 400 pixels.
Okay, so it's checking the left edge this time.
Right. And if it does go beyond 400, the code immediately sets the right edge, c.right, to 0.
So it basically teleports it from one side to the other.
You got it. Think of it like the screen is a loop, so when something exits on the left, it enters on the right, and vice versa.
Like a continuous circle. That's a really clever way to do it. And the example even changes the circle's size for a moment, so you really see that jump.
Yeah, it's a nice visual touch. Now, another checkpoint for you, checkpoint number 2.
All right, hit me.
What if, instead of checking C.left 400 for the wraparound, the code checked if C.right 400? What would happen then?
So if it checked the right edge instead of the left, it would wrap around as soon as the right edge hit 400 pixels. It wouldn't even need to go fully off screen on the left first.
Exactly. You're 2 for 2 on the checkpoints.
Awesome. Okay, we've covered reversing, stopping, bounding, and wraparound. Now for a really fun one, bouncing.
Yeah, bouncing is a classic. It's basically taking reversing direction and applying it at the boundaries. So the object hits the edge, and instead of stopping or wrapping, it bounces back.
Like a ball hitting a wall or the floor?
Exactly. It's essential for creating realistic physics in game and animations.
So how does the code handle that?
Well, the code checks for 2 conditions. If the left edge of the circle goes below 0, that means it's off the left side of the screen.
Okay.
Or if the right edge goes beyond 400 pixels, meaning it's off the right side.
So either edge hitting the boundary.
Right. And if either of those is true, then, and you might remember this, CDX is set to CDX.
Oh, it's that same line of code we used for reversing direction?
You got it. Hit the edge, flip the DX, and bounce right back. It's a really elegant solution.
It's like it just automatically knows to change direction when it hits a boundary.
Exactly. Now, think back. This is checkpoint number 3. In which earlier example did we also use that same C.dx equals Nash C.dx technique?
Let me see. Reversing, stopping, banding. Oh, is reversing motion. We used it at the very beginning.
Spot on. That one line of code is the key to so much of this motion control.
It's amazing how such a small change can make such a big difference. Okay, so we've seen how to make things reverse, stop, stay within boundaries, wrap around, and bounce.
But there's one more thing we need to talk about, and that's how smooth the motion looks.
Right, because sometimes an object might be moving quickly, but it still looks a bit jerky or jumpy.
Exactly. And the examples show this really well. If you set C.dx to a really high number, like 100, the circle zips across the screen, but it doesn't look very fluid.
It's like it's teleporting instead of moving smoothly.
Yeah, that's because with a big dx value, the object is taking these big jumps with each update. So to make the motion smoother, we need to think about how often the object's position is being updated.
Okay, so it's not just about the speed dx, but also how frequently it's being redrawn.
Exactly. And that's where the concept of app.sets per second comes in. It refers to how many times per second the computer updates the position of the object on the screen.
So more updates per second means smoother motion?
Generally, yes. But there's a trade-off. If you have a really high app.steps per second, it can put a lot of strain on the computer. It's like asking it to work overtime.
So it's about finding a good balance.
Right. You want a DX that gives you the speed you want, but not so big that the jumps are noticeable. And you want a reasonable app.steps per second, high enough for smoothness, but not so high that it overloads the computer.
So it's like finding that sweet spot. And the examples suggest that a DX of around 10, combined with an app.steps per second of 40, often gives a good balance of speed and smoothness.
Exactly. It looks nice and fluid without putting too much stress on the system.
So we've covered a lot today. Reversing, stopping, bounding, wraparound, bouncing, and even smoothing out the motion.
And it's important to remember that these are just the basics. There are so many other cool motion patterns you can create by building on these ideas.
Like jumping and falling, slowing down and speeding up, moving in complex paths, and even circular motion. The possibilities are really endless.
So as you go about your day, pay attention to how things move around you.
Yeah, look for examples of these different types of motion. See if you can spot them in games, in animations, even in the real world.
Think about how those movements are being created. What are the underlying principles?
And start to imagine how you could combine these techniques to create your own unique and amazing animations and games.
Because once you understand these basic building blocks, you can really unleash your creativity and bring your ideas to life.
Awesome. Well, that was a really fun deep dive into motion control.
Absolutely. Always exciting to explore these fundamental concepts.
Until next time.
See you then.